Welcome to Read Your Comics. Today I'm looking at an X-Men classic. But is it though? Thanks for joining me today. I'm going to be diving into this X-Men classic with Bill Sienkiewicz doing the art, Mike Mignola cover on this reprinted issue. But does this book hold up to the classic billing that's on the cover here? Let me get into that, but before I do, I want to give a quick shout out to all the viewer support. Every like, comment, and subscription is appreciated. If you're enjoying positive comic content, please consider hitting thumbs up. Comments are always encouraged, even if you just hit thumbs up, thumbs down. Love this book, hate this book, just say something. And if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future videos. Now with that out of the way, let's take a quick look at this Mike Mignola cover. X-Men Classic is so great because of the alternate covers you get on these classic storylines. I did a video on the top 10, but I only went through the Byrne era, and this is not the Byrne era anymore, so I didn't get into the Mignola cover era, but he did about a year's worth of covers too, and of course, they had to get him to do the Dracula issue cover. I love the layout of this. There's like a nice triangular design going here with everything. Wolverine with a stake in his hand, Nightcrawler holding the cross. I mean, it's a great layout, and if we compared it to the original cover of X-Men 159, I love the Bill Sienkiewicz cover, but I kind of like this one better. I just like the layout better, and it includes, Dracula a little bit more prominent. So I got to go with the classic X-Men cover between the two, even though both great artists, both good covers. We should also point out this cover is even inked by P. Craig Russell. So you got, kind of a superstar tandem on there. Let's go ahead and dive into the interiors. Sienkiewicz does the interior of this. He also does the follow-up to this, which was X-Men Annual 6. And I've heard in interviews that Sienkiewicz was offered to be the regular artist on X-Men, and he turned it down because this is the style they wanted him to draw in, and it was not the style he was in the mindset to continue working in. He wanted to be a little bit more experimental, which you were seeing already on a lot of his covers, but he wanted to break away from what he even describes as being a Neil Adams clone. Now, I don't think at this stage he was still like trying to do Neil Adams as much as he was maybe on like those early Moon Knights, but you can still see that mindset, that technique in this compared to what he would eventually do when he moves over to New Mutants and was allowed to be more experimental as he went on. But I mean, you can see it on this page. Like if you just showed me this page and I didn't know much about Sienkiewicz other than his covers, I would not have identified this as him. So the X-Men are going to Misty Knight's apartment. I really don't remember why they're not at the mansion, but they're going to like just crash at her apartment. And Misty has a new roommate because that's not Misty. And this is how they always charge into their friends' homes. Wolverine kicking the door in and Nightcrawler just teleporting in unannounced. Startles their new roommate who Misty's away. This is all just a bunch of like blah, blah, blah about why they're even here, right? Kitty is they're in town partly to see Kitty's parents, and she's going to go visit them and wants Storm to come. They need to put Storm in some different clothes. Like, this is like kind of a trope for Claremont, always getting Storm dressed up. But Sienkiewicz didn't really indulge in it as much as, like, say, Byrne did, or Cockrum even. Normally that would be some excuse to have like a big panel of Storm in a new outfit, but he just kind of did it small right there. Don't get a lot of Wolverine in this issue. This is some of the closest we really get to him. One thing I'm going to say about this issue, it is jam-packed full of panels and has some great facial expressions in it. I mean, like, look at Storm's face right here on this one. Look at this woman's face. I've already forgotten her name. I mean, look at her face right there with her kind of like raised eyebrows. She's checking out Colossus, calls him cute. Kitty's like, he's not cute. So I don't know what the stage of their relationship was there just yet. You get an interlude with Scott visiting Alex, and they're just out there shooting boulders and stuff. Another thing, I feel like I've seen this multiple times in the Claremont run. It's like he goes back to this. Anytime Havoc is like out in the desert, him and either Lorna, or I guess if he has somebody else with him, they're going to go out and blow some rocks up. This is just a quick interlude because it goes straight into or you get one more page with Corsair is there. Now they know he is their father. There is some interesting dialogue here for Havoc to be mentioned, how he was adopted and kind of had parents, so to speak, but Cyclops never did. They go just have a little chat right here. Another great facial expression there. They're asking if when Corsair leaves, if he wants to bring his two sons with him. And he's like, I don't know. Cut back to Misty's apartment, and the phone rings, and why the roommate's not answering the phone. Kurt's like, oh, I'll just go ahead and answer your phone for you. And it's Kitty, so a little bit of time has passed here, at least a few hours, where she's gone over to her parents' house. She's asking where Storm is, that she left a little while ago, and they don't know what happened to her. But we see Storm just kind of laying in an alleyway here. There's a narrative break right here, I feel like. This is part of the story I don't think flowed very well, because we went straight from Storm and Aurora leaving to all of a sudden she's laying out in an alleyway. And I get that we're supposed to be building a little suspense here about what happened to her. I mean, the cover already gives it away. The original cover gives it away. So I think it would have been better served with a page here of Storm. You don't necessarily have to have seen Dracula, but Storm saying like, okay, Kitty, I'll see you later, being out in the alleyway, instead of just like, there she is laying in the alleyway. It just seems odd that Storm, of all characters, would get jumped in an alleyway like that. And even she says it when she's at the hospital here, which they find out how they said there was like a wallet or something. So it feels very rushed. A lot of pseudo medical mumbo jumbo going on in here. Another great facial expression here and here, even here. But yeah, she mentions that she's kind of embarrassed that she got taken out by a common mugger. But she leaves the hospital against medical advice. And they go back to Misty's. They don't go back to the mansion. So while they're there, I mean, I'm not quite sure why they're crashing at Misty's. But she goes back to the apartment, and she starts having these like fever dreams. And again, like I said, we're going to see pages just packed with panels here. This panel, I think, is more like what Sienkiewicz was moving towards. This is kind of what he's wanting to do. He's wanting to experiment with these kind of techniques and stuff in drawing, but he's still kind of sticking to the house mold, so to speak. But you get her with these, the mist coming in through the window, very, tense horror vibe there, which is pretty good. Kitty returns back to Misty's, and she wants to see Storm, because her and Storm have a pretty good relationship, right? I mean, ever since Kitty first appeared, that's kind of who she bonded with. And she goes in to see her, and she's like, it's so dark in here. And she opens it up. She's like, oh, the curtains, child. Close them, I beg you. The sunlight hurts, which is very out of character for Storm. She loves the sun. She loves being outside. And her face looks old right here, which is what Kitty is thinking. Maybe not on that page, but on this page, she's thinking that she looks old like her grandmother at this point. And she's, her wound was to the neck, wasn't deep enough to penetrate the artery, as Wolverine says here. It may have mentioned it on the medical mumbo jumbo page. But again, look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 panels on this page. So we're cramming in a lot going on here. Great face. Storm has a random scarf with a big D on it. But I think the key here is that when she's talking to Storm, she said, the lamplight flashed on my Star of Day, which made Storm wince. So, little key there. Finally, we see Dracula make his first big appearance in the issue. And he shows up, and he's kind of like, come with me, Storm. I'm the one that did this to you, more or less. And again, we've got like a quick narrative shift here. We just see Kitty run off. Kitty's already suspecting what's going on, but she doesn't want to tell them because she doesn't think they'll believe her. And she comes back looking all Van Helsing with this hat on, and she's carrying a cross. This is a pretty interesting scene because Kitty is Jewish, and when Dracula sees the cross, he realizes like, oh, that it's not hurting me as it should because you are not a believer in Christianity. You're not a Christian. And so he goes to grab her, but when he grabs her, the Star of David around her neck burns him. So I've never really heard that in like vampire lore. Obviously, crucifixes, crosses, wooden stakes, sunlight, yada yada. I've never really heard about like a different religious symbol hurting a vampire. So I don't know if that had ever been something that from Tomb of Dracula or this is something Claremont kind of came up with, but pretty clever idea, I thought. So Storm flies off. I don't love this box around this panel right here. It doesn't really make narrative sense to me as to why it would be there. I guess it's just a little bit of experimentation on Sienkiewicz's part. At this point, Kitty screams, alerts the other X-Men who come charging into the room, and she explains what's going on. So they all head out to Central Park, where there's a castle in Central Park they're going to go to. Wow, how they decided that's where Dracula went, I don't know, but that's where they go, and they confront Dracula in Central Park. He has wolves attack him, and rats and wolves attacking him, and they pretty much just have like a little scuffle right here. Pretty well orchestrated. They do a fastball special, but Dracula's able to like turn into vapor and dodge it as he's laughing. Colossus gives him a pretty hard blow, but it doesn't really do anything. And then Wolverine's saying, yeah, I've seen the movies. I know what to do. So he takes his claws, and it says he makes the sign of a cross, but I mean, this angle, it's an X, obviously. And again, it does nothing to Dracula. Says, as I told the child, this ploy is useless unless you truly believe. So we kind of get an idea of where Wolverine stands on that right now. But Nightcrawler just picks up a couple wooden stakes, and he makes the sign of a cross, and he is a believer. So it, sends Dracula back in pain. And then there's some lightning. I don't know if this is lightning that Dracula is doing. Yeah, he says, with a thought, I can summon lightning from the heavens. So he can do something that Storm can do too. So why is he wanting Storm? Look at this page. Again, panels. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Weird flow right here. Weird flow. This is sometimes where I think Sienkiewicz is getting a little too cute. So Kitty had slipped off, and she goes directly into the castle to find, a coffin. She's torn between if this Dracula's or Storm's. If I open this up, is Storm going to pop out and get me? And the reading flow does go like this, but that's not the greatest panel flow. But again, great face. It's just funny that she's got this jacket on and the hat, like she's Van Helsinging it up. Another great face, Storm with the vampire face. So Storm does show up. She didn't pop out of the coffin, but she does show up. And Kitty in her inner thoughts here is thinking she's not fully a vampire yet, because by the rules of vampirism, she shouldn't completely turn until she rises from the grave 3 days later. So she should still be human. And she gambles on that by dropping the stake and essentially doing the whole look inside yourself, use your willpower to overcome, I'm your friend and yada yada. Just kind of the trope of you're strong enough to overcome the vampirism. Meanwhile, the rest of the team is still out there fighting. I guess this is Storm that does this lightning, and it lays the other X-Men out. And she's like, well, what are you going to do with them? And he's like, well, I'm going to slay them. And another great face. Again, like I said, great facial expressions in this. That Dracula is something you will never do. And she switches into her costume, and she has beaten his control. And now her and Dracula will have a little tussle in the air. He converts into a giant bat creature, and they go flying around battling with each other until they land in, I guess it's a restaurant. And there's like a, back and forth about how are you able to do this? And I'm going to kill this woman unless you submit to me. And she's like, fine, I'm not going to let you kill someone in my name. And even if I go with you, I'll never kill. And, now she's like very much in character, right? I like this face again with this transformation where he still kind of has like the bat ears as he's morphing back into his human form. And then he goes on about how awesome Storm is, that of all of his, immortal life, he's never met a woman so intriguing. Doom had this same fascination with Storm. And he really wants her to be queen. She refuses, and he's like, fine, but you are still basically mine because, he's infected her or whatever you want to call it with his bite, even if she's been able to overcome it in this moment. And that'll play more into it in the X-Men annual that follows up on this. And that came out like within a few months of this issue. So this is kind of a two-part story, but it wasn't continuous in the main series. It continues in an annual. But as of right now, it would appear Storm still has a vampire curse. So is sunlight still going to hurt her? I guess not, because that looks like sunlight right there. And then here she basically explains, yes, I had to use my willpower to overcome. And it, brings her to tears right there. And that's a great facial expression as well. When all of a sudden they get a phone call and it's Moira McTaggart who's at the mansion. And she's like, you all need to come back right away. And that's pretty much the end. Like I said, but it does carry over into the X-Men annual. So as far as like Sienkiewicz goes, it's a well-drawn issue. A couple of places I feel like the panel flow doesn't work great. It's definitely still in that house mold as opposed to what I think of Sienkiewicz. He's still like a year or two away from really pushing the boundaries as far as like Elektra Lives or any of the, more painted graphic novels that he did, and even his New Mutants run, which would come about 2 years after this. So I find it just more or less like an interesting little piece of history with Sienkiewicz and his development as an artist to push his own boundaries. He obviously loves comics. He still works in comics to this day, even though he's such a master illustrator. He can get commercial art, which he does do. He does do commercial art, movie art, yada, yada. But he sticks around in comics because he does love the medium. And, sometimes it's like this kind of panel layout and stuff doesn't quite work for me. But again, he was pushing himself here. And I think if he had stayed on this title, drawing like this, it would have been pretty good, I think, over time. But I'm glad that he decided he wanted to grow more as an artist, and we got some pretty phenomenal work out of it in the years to come. So that's pretty much it for what would have been X-Men 159, but I looked at it in this classic X-Men 63. Until next time, read your comics. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed my breakdown of this issue, you can support the channel by hitting subscribe. It costs you nothing and helps other comic fans find the channel. You can also visit readyourcomics.com for cool merch, like this. Read Your Comics isn't just a brand, it's a mantra. And when you wear a Read Your Comics shirt, you are helping spread the word. For more classic comics conversation, be sure to follow me on Instagram at read.your.comics. And if you're still here, why not watch one of my older videos? Here or here.